Hello and welcome to the Food Science Foodie. You may have guessed it, yes, I am a food scientist and a foodie, and on this rainy Saturday, we are going to be recreating Pixar's Ratatouille. I like to start this by honing my blade. It's really going to help make sure that the knife is nice and aligned for all of these vegetables. Now you'll notice that once I started cutting into the garlic, my cutting board really started shifting around quite a bit. So I'm going to show you guys a little trick that you can do to prevent that. It's really simple. You get a paper towel, wet it down, and put the paper towel underneath the cutting board. Now this is a trick that I learned back when I was doing my culinary training. We use these kind of cutting boards all the time. Nice and sturdy. Now I'm using a benchtop scraper. They're super handy. Now the trick to peeling your onion is you want to find that root end and you want to just trim off those kind of little root ends like hairs that are sticking out. You just want to trim that off but not cut the bottom part off. Reason being, that root end will actually hold the onion together as you're chopping it. Now, unfortunately, that one that I wanted to demonstrate with you guys was actually pretty rotted. So as you can tell, my onions are getting to be a bit too old. Not a great batch. So with this one, I actually trimmed the root a little bit too far. It can still work fairly well though, as long as you know how to handle the onion. Meet Mr. Bailey, my new basil plant. It's really important that you give your sauté pan time to heat up before adding your oil. Now that my pan's hot, it's ready for the olive oil. Mr. Bailey gets a new home. Now, to follow the recipe, I'm keeping 1 teaspoon of garlic out, and that's going to be for the oil sauce that'll go on top later. Now, I did a taste test after adding the basil, and my first thought was that it was a little bit more bitter than I'd have liked. I thought about adding some sugars, but I decided I'd let it sit and see how it tasted. When I visited it later, it turned out that that was a good decision because as the onion and everything had time to sit in, the sweetness really came out in it. Also, note it's really important the kind of tomatoes that you get. Some crushed tomatoes are much sweeter than others. So I would recommend asking around and finding out, what's the best option in your area. It took me a few tries to figure out exactly what the best setting was. But once I got it, it was smooth sailing. That is until I got to the eggplant. It was just too soft to be used on this mandolin. I ended up doing it by hand. Probably the most satisfying part of this video. It definitely takes time, so you'll want to do this on a day when you've got plenty of time and it's really kind of a relaxing activity. This mixture is really important for flavor, so it has herbes de Provence, olive oil, salt, pepper, that other teaspoon of garlic that we left beside, and fresh basil. And all of that gets drizzled on top, and it really sets off the flavor. It's really important, and if you're not able to do it, I'm not sure that ratatouille would really taste as good and fresh. Now it had to bake. It took about 45 minutes. After 45 minutes, I took the parchment paper off and cooked it for about another 20 minutes. And here it is. If you could smell it. For the plate up, we're using a little cookie cutter ring to try to imitate Remy in Ratatouille. getting everything to fit was a little bit of a challenge, and I was definitely a little nervous about having the stack fall apart. As you'll see, my ratatouille was definitely a little runny. The vegetables were still putting off a little bit of their juices after plating, so there'll be a little bit of cleanup work to do on the plate. But all in all, the ratatouille itself was not watery or not watered down. It still had really great flavor. More on that in a minute. Here it is. Let's give it a taste. Yep. The ratatouille was so good. It was the first time I'd ever made it. It's light and hearty at the same time. It's not heavy because there's no meat, but it's still got that nice rich stewed flavor from those cooked tomatoes. It makes it really something special. Now, something I did off camera afterwards was I actually threw some pepperonis on top. I was one of those kids who used to think that it was a bunch of pepperoni, and I can confirm it was delicious. See you next time.